working with River Gallery School. They're going to take some, the arborist has been kind enough to work with us, and it's going to be taking some pieces that we can send around to schools and people can do rubbings of. We're also going to be doing on December 3rd with River Gallery School, there will be a community rubbing project, so you're all welcome to come. And that will be a rubbing of the entire stuff. And as for the wood, there's a lot of unknowns about it. I contacted some lumber mills, but because of the cabling and the hard wire, they don't want to use that wood because it'll take their saws out. So I think that really it's sort of wait and see what's going to happen. The arborist is going to take the bulk of it. Chances are that the center of this part is all rock. So, there's a lot of unknowns. We have some people who are interested in maybe making some walking sticks of smaller pieces and that kind of thing. So yeah, well, we're gonna, sort of take it bit by bit. Yeah, I had a question for you. As we were driving over here, Bill, we were wondering how many leaves a tree like this might drop in a season. And then, from how many leaves a tree might drop, what volume of that is it over the lifetime? And before they shrivel up, how big would the pile be? I'm not good at math. I will tell you. A lot.
I will say that there was a study done, and I think it was at UVM grad school. I have to look this one up. But they wanted to get a sense of what the weight of the green leaves on a sugar maple tree were.
Okay.
And this poor grad student, she went out and she plucked every single leaf, and then before they could dry, she wanted to get what the green weight was. She actually weighed it, and I forget the number, but it was a lot more than you would think.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Well, if folks think back to some of our weird storms in October of '87, we got about, well, here we actually got more, it was just a wet, heavy snow, caused a lot of tree damage, and that was, the leaves were still on the trees, so that's why a lot of that damage occurred. Bennington actually got hit worse than we did, but it literally looked like a bomb went off on a lot of those big city trees because of that. Yeah. So they do add quite a bit of weight to the tree, but in terms of the number, I'm sure she probably counted them too.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that one up, but that's a great question. Yes?
When it comes down, how do they take it to? Are they chopping it into pieces, or how does that work?
Yeah, our understanding is there will be at least one crane here, and again, they're cabled, and so they'll be taking it down piece by, liter by liter, and then taking it down from, breaking it into smaller pieces. So, and I would imagine, because as much as I never thought I would know this much about trees, I still don't know everything. There's a lot of it, again, is going to depend upon, what they find as they take it down. So
How can we get a piece?
that's
Take
it.
a walking stick out.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see what happens, and then I can work with the arborist, and if there are things that seem like they're going to be simple enough for us to sort of set aside, maybe what I will do is we'll put some over here, and I would ask that if you do see a pile of random wood over there, that you only come on the weekend. We have kids in this building, and their privacy is paramount, which is why we are doing this on a Saturday. We don't want people here during the week. So if you see some, random piles of wood, I'm fine if you stop by and pick things up on a Saturday or a Sunday. So
What is the date for taking it down?
we're not allowed to share that, just in terms of making sure that we don't have some disruption. This tree has a history. Yeah, it has a history. So
We should chain ourselves to it now.
right, yes, Sandra, absolutely. Chain yourself to it now. Yep. Yes.
Be kind enough to take a picture from the top.
We can see. Yeah, I mean, another cool thing would be, you know, of course, all these things are completely dependent on people's ability to volunteer their time and their expertise. You know, and obviously people have been really great about this. This is a really nice segue to this photo that was just handed to me. Mitch Weiss is a photographer from Putney, and he took this. I don't even know the technical whatevers. I'm sure he can help with it.
I'll mention it quickly.
Yes.
This was actually shot with a camera from the 1950s. It's from an 8x10 inch negative and was enlarged optically in a dark room to make a silver print of a silver maple. So
it was taken in the 1950s?
it was the camera that it was produced with. So I photographed it from across the way maybe last month.
Oh.
Yeah, but on traditional film, large format film, and enlarged in a dark room.
Not digital.
But so that was taken this week.
Yeah, all analog and printed last week in my darkroom.
Did you use like a Kodak or Triax?
This was actually Ilford FP4, but Tri-X is what I use for portraiture mostly. So you know.
I suggest that you raffle it off, or if not that, print another tree. And the money should go to the tree.
I like that. Well, I'm printing this in an edition of 5. This is the first of 5 that I'm going to donate to the hospital. And if anyone is interested, I am definitely happy to raffle off others.
No, I think there would be an interest.
Yeah, you got it. Let's say the word. Beautiful. Thank you. Maybe for now.
Any other questions? Yes.
Seeds or rootlets, anything to.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
What I'm wondering is, will there be babies from this tree?
It likely could stump sprout, but my guess is, Julie, are you folks going to have the stump taken out? Or?
We're having the stump taken out, and we're working with the urban and community forestry program, which also manages the big tree list, to see about getting a grant for another tree to replace it, or what makes the most sense at that point. So, yeah, yes.
I'm a little late, I apologize. Was there an Abenaki statement about the...
We actually didn't make an Abenaki statement about that. Yeah, that somebody has one. I didn't even think about that. That was that's a great point. I will prepare one for when the day the tree comes down. I've also been asked to sort of do some respect for, you know, spirits and things like that. So, yeah, definitely.
It's Cassie. Oh, that's.
One of my friends who live there said I took a picture of it. I'm going to send it to them. Betty must still be sick.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Colleen Dissler, howdy. How you doing? Good to see you.
Okay.
Yes.
We do have one card that wasn't
when
able
I
to
saw
be
you,
read, but he wants to-
we're just thinking about trees. I immediately thought about a big pine tree right across the roof from here, because that's what started the Brattleboro Tree Board. Well, it was the tree committee then, and then it's actually a board.
So that's
Yeah.
what exists before the tree.
Right, and didn't that start, I think, for the bicentennial, if I remember right, in '91? I think.
The tree boards
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It doesn't even come close to the loss I and others feel when these witness trees had to come down. They gave us so much and were never honored in the way they deserved. The last one, which was taken out by a microburst, measured 6 feet 10 inches by 5'3". So thank you for celebrating the witness tree on Putney Road today. Of course, life goes on, but I will never forget the grace our trees provided to all. So, yeah, these trees are part of our community. It's really,
a couple trees away from this one we saw, but we didn't tell him about that. But yeah, you could see where it had.
Yeah, on the damage, you often see branches on the ground. So this, we had, think back to, I looked up in my notes just to make sure. In 1999, we had really bad drought. In the year 2000, we had, it was Build Your Ark time. That was the year that the South Fordsboro Road blew out and caved in. We got, and my house is on the mountain right above that. We got 7.6 inches of rain in 5 hours that night. So 2000, we got too much moisture. 01 and 02, drought. So 3 out of 4 years drought. Some research was done that shows there's a delayed response often with drought. So my coworker, Tim Morton, I don't know if you met Tim, used to work with me. And he works in state lands now. He called me and he said, "Bill, the hemlock's dead." I said, "What?" I went running up the next morning into the woods, and sure enough, it had up and died. And it was 2005. So it fit the pattern of there being a delayed response
to the
trees.
drought.
So here's a tree. This was likely a 400-year-old tree. Hemlocks can live to be 700 or 800 in some cases. And this was probably, because I've seen some up in Queechee that we poured, and we hit rot when we were at almost 300 years, and we still had that much more to go.
Wow, wow. Oh, that's fascinating.
Do you?
Okay.
I just wanted to ask real quick. Do you know if there's a runner-up silver maple in Vermont that will be taking this guy's place?
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
a great question.
I don't know if there's another immediately nearby. Or...
Yeah, well, once a tree comes down, it's open season.
Kind of
shall we
free.
say.
Yeah, so we'll have to go on the search for a silver maple.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'd like it to be in Wyndham County.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Okay, welcome.
We're gonna go
I
out.
know.
We're gonna take a walk.
Mostly in good condition. You know,
Your
and it's
name,
funny,
what's
like,
your
I came
connection?
outside
You're going to stay down there?
Good morning. My name is Bill Gunther. I'm the retired Wyndham County Forester. I served in Wyndham County from 1986 until 2018. I was employed by the State Forest and Parks Department as the county forester. And when I moved down here, I was driving down Putney Road one day and I thought, that's a very big silver maple on that lawn. So I stopped, looked at it, and thought, that's a really large tree. At that time, I knew there was something called the Big Tree Registry, but I didn't really know much about it. And oddly enough, the same week that I stopped and looked at this tree, I got a call from Professor Jeff Freeman at Castleton. And Dr. Freeman was the coordinator for the Big Tree program in Vermont. And the program was started in the 1940s by the American Forest Foundation. And they wanted to come up with a way to quantify the size of trees. So what they came up with was a point system where you would measure certain attributes of the tree. And that's the circumference of the tree or the girth of the tree at 4.5 feet. And every 1 inch of circumference would be 1 point. And then you'd measure the total height of the tree. And every 1 foot would be 1 point. And then the last attribute is the spread of the crown of the tree. And that one got a little more complicated because you had to measure, no crown is perfectly circular, so you measure the maximum diameter of the crown, the minimum diameter of the crown, you take the average of that, and then arbitrarily divide by 4 because they didn't want the crown to have as much importance but still be a factor in the formula. So the formula comes down to circumference in inches plus total height in feet, and then 1/4 of the average crown diameter. And when you add all that up, you'll come up with a certain number of points. And this tree, when it was last measured, came out to 353 points. And earlier I had mentioned where if a tree is 250 points or more, it's going to be a tree that you're going to notice in Vermont. It's going to be pretty substantial. So at 353, this is one of the highest point count trees in the state. We only have one tree that's just over 400 points in Vermont, and that's the cottonwood up in Colchester. As an example how this might compare to, let's say, the sequoias or the redwoods, the tree on the list with the largest points nationwide is the General Sherman sequoia tree, and that's a little over 1,300 points. So it's basically almost 4 times as many points as this tree. However, in Vermont, since our trees don't grow as large as redwoods or sequoias, this is still a very, very substantial tree to get that large. And considering it's growing in a very limited root zone, and it's not an ancient tree. Some people think it's an old growth 200 or 300-year-old tree. It was pulled up from the riverbank when the house was built in 1900, and a little seedling was planted right in the middle of this once circular driveway. And then this is what it's become basically 125 years later. The sad part is, though, the trees are like people. We're mortal, and trees are mortal, so they have essentially a fixed lifespan. Some species live a lot longer, some not so long. Hemlocks, which grow throughout Vermont, are probably about the longest lived tree we have. They can grow up to 700 or 800 years. Sugar maples can grow up to about 400. Unfortunately, silver maple, its maximum peak age, I found, and I did a literature search, is essentially about 125 years. And that's where we are. So unfortunately, the tree has sort of hit the point where it's a geriatric tree, and it would take so much money to try to remediate the problems that this tree has. It's had numerous broken branches and storms. It's been cabled. But the biggest problem is if part of the tree fails, one portion could fall and hit the house. If this leader over here broke, it could come right down across Putney Road, and given the traffic, if it happened during the day, it could very easily, cause somebody's life. So, in the interest of safety, NFI has decided that unfortunately it's going to need to come down for everybody's safety. It will be a sad day, but I'm hoping that maybe we can replant a new tree in its place. They're going to grind the stump out, so we'd be able to plant another tree here.
How will they so there's a
Excuse me? A fellow by the name of Royce. I forget his company. Still trying to decide. It's probably not going to have a long enough straight section. Somebody said, well, gee, maybe we'd like some boards or to make something out of it. There's a good chance there's going to be a fair amount of rot in it. If you look up that branch there, that's kind of the indicator of what the inside may be. So I'm suspecting that the very inner part of the tree is likely going to be hollow. Northeast Family Institute's going to have to pay. We did look into trying to get one or two of the best arborists in the state in terms of hazard tree analysis to look at it, but that would have meant somebody coming down from central Vermont, is where both of the gentlemen live. They would have had to rent a bucket truck to do an analysis, and that would have cost probably about $1,000, and then to figure out what you were going to do to remediate it. I mean, you can only cable so much together, and it has cables in, as you can see, but we don't know the status of them. So if there was enough sound wood, you could possibly recable it, but the biggest problem is the restricted root zone that the tree has. As the tree gets larger in the shoot, the roots have to be able to correspondingly expand. And I said earlier during my talk, we used to believe that tree roots went out to about the drip line of the tree. However, more recent research shows that those roots may actually go 2 to 3 times that radius. And this tree has a crown spread of a little over, it's 104 feet in diameter. So the radius would be roughly 50 feet in that direction. So if you took 3 times 50, these roots want to be on the other side of Putney Road, but they can't because Putney Road's there's utilities. So the fact that this tree could get this large with this little bit of root zone, I mean, it's truly amazing that it's been able to do that. So I think we have to try to look at those factors, that we were blessed to be able to enjoy this tree at this size for so many years. And sadly, like us, if you're going to find silver maple, it's usually going to be like along the riverbank, and they don't grow all the way throughout Vermont. You won't find them up in the kingdom, or the Northeast Kingdom as we call it. But typically along the riverbank, if you go to the boat landing at Putney, there's a big black cherry there, along with some silver maple and some hackberry, which is actually in the elm family. And that's about as far north as they grow. Windham County is a real interesting melting pot of tree species. A lot of things that grow more south of us, some of the hickories and oaks, just barely come up into Windham County. They don't go farther north because of colder climate. And yet a number of the northern species are what we call boreal species, like paper birch, white spruce. They grow down south and pretty much stop at Windham County. So when I moved down here 35 years ago, I realized there's a whole lot more tree species than where I'm from up in central Vermont. So it was kind of interesting. I had to relearn a number of the species I'd learned at UVM. You can, but the sap it's like red maple. People do tap it, but it takes a lot more sap to make a gallon of syrup.
We got a neighbor that's tapping Norway maples, and I don't know if they're very good.
Oh, yeah, Norway. Yeah, well, they're actually not a native species.
Right, I know that.
And we actually put them on our invasives list
Yeah.
because they will move into the woods and colonize and
Oh, yeah.
displace native species.
They planted a lot of Norways around Vermont.
I know,
Down here.
I know. It was a very commonly planted tree because it grew fast. It grew in restricted root zones. It grew in all kinds of conditions. It deals with ozone fairly well. So it had a lot of attributes that you'd want to see in a street tree.
And then where did it come from?
It does come from from Europe. It's a European species that was introduced here. But a good example of where it's colonized, if you go down to the Brattleboro retreat across the street, the old Linden Lodge, that hillside behind there, that's all come up in little Norway maple seedlings and saplings there. So we did end up putting it on the list. A couple other problems it has is it has girdling roots where the roots don't tend to grow out. They like to grow in circles, and that causes failure in the tree. Luckily, this species doesn't do it. And it also, you can't grow grass underneath Norway maple because the shade is so dense, which is fine for some people, but some people, if they want it as a lawn tree, you have a hard time growing a lawn under it.
Are you headed right up to? Oh yeah, we're.
Any other questions, Maria?
Thank you so much. So we don't know when it's gonna be taken down.
No, not sure. I think it's going to be within the next month or two, though, I believe.
So it's gonna be taking a long time, no? Or it's gonna be in a day.
My guess is it depends upon how big the tree crew is. To take it down, they will likely start at the ends and work back. They may actually have to get a lane closure or possibly close Putney Road for a short period of time to safely take it down. But somebody would be up there on a crane and then making some cuts, and then they would have a sling around the portion that's being cut. And it's literally like doing surgery to take down a tree like this, especially when you have infrastructure around it, like the road and houses and whatnot. Very different than if you're taking a tree down in your back lawn where nothing's going to hit the house. If that were the case with this tree, and I wish we could pick it up and move it away from the house, we would probably just be left.
So you mentioned that it's probably gonna be another tree plant here. I hope so.
That's what I'm hoping.
Who's in charge of deciding that?
Well, that would be up to NFI. The Northeast Family Institute owns the property.
How do we affect them? Because I've been monitoring ginkgo.
Gecko.
One, and then down on one Pastigate there is a brown birch that I've watched for 20 years or so from the time it was planted. And now it's a huge, huge tree. It could be as big as that. So those are just two ideas, suggestions, and this is heartthrob.
Yeah,
It
no,
has to
Bill's
go
box is
because
in.
of all these necessities. But how does one influence the other?
Oh, I think yes.
Well, I'm going to encourage them to plant something. What we may do is maybe just seek some donations. I could maybe write an article for the Reformer and see if folks might be willing to donate something in honor and memory of this tree.
What does it take besides purchasing the seedling and digging a hole?
That's pretty much it. That, and then let Mother Nature do its thing.
I think there, enough of us, combined strength to do that.
Yeah. And if they are going to get the stump ground, that would make it a lot easier because there's going to be a lot of roots to this tree. I mentioned earlier that the rough rule of thumb is when you're looking at a tree, you're seeing 80-some% of it. Roots are about 16 to 8, depends upon the species, sometimes less.
Down or out? That's
16, 18% of the tree you don't even see.
yeah, but so we're talking about lateral roots or
They don't go there very deep.
yeah, so they're
Couple,
more.
2.5, 3 feet maybe.
Yeah.
At the most.
So what's the gigantic problem?
Well, the
Do they have to
the
all
biggest
come out?
problem that this tree has is it's got a limited root zone. And I don't know if you caught my comment earlier. Oh, okay. I mentioned that we originally thought the tree roots went out to about the drip line of the tree. So, I mean, if you look at the drip line, you're already out in Putney Road. But
This drip line this way.
Dr. Dennis Ryan down at University of Massachusetts did some research, and he looked at how far roots, because they now can do this by DNA analysis. And this was an anomaly, but at this conference he mentioned that an apple tree usually doesn't have a crown wider than about 25 or 30 feet. He actually found a microscopic, now we're talking a root here, not a big root, but barely a little fiber, like no bigger than probably a piece of your hair. He found, and he proved this, that it was DNA related to the parent, and the root here was found 252 feet away from the tree.
Connected to the tree, or so there was a filigree.
Connected to the tree.
So given the chance, they will, that's
Yeah, so when you, now that we know that roots grow considerably farther, assuming they're free to grow, when you consider 3 times the radius, the crown of this tree when I last measured it was 104 feet in diameter. So the radius would be half, 52 feet. So if you went measured from the tree out 150 feet, you're going to be well on the other side of Putney Road.
So how does that, what is the pertinent? How does that pertain to digging another hole and planting another tree? At all?
Well, the main thing would be that is if they do, they would probably have to, they're going to stump grind they're going to grind the stump, and that'll be chewed up by a special machine, and that will likely, that's not going to take all the roots
But
up.
that's not sub.
They can go down a couple feet. It's a special tool that's got a carbide blade. They're very expensive because you can imagine, anytime you're digging in dirt, if you take a chainsaw and you get it in dirt, it dulls quickly.
But what's the point of that? What does that help or accomplish?
That gives you the planting site because the tree is so big. I mean, it's over 20 feet around, so that would give us a planting site for a new tree.
If you're planting a seedling of what, that circumference, what's, I mean, I'm just trying to understand, I mean, I planted trees, dig a hole and they've been fine without.
Well, tree roots don't go much deeper than a couple feet. So, if you get down a couple feet lower than ground level, you've got enough room for trees.
And the roots that are left, I mean, there's going to be some pretty large roots even, where you're standing. Those are eventually, they're going to rot down eventually. Yeah, I mean, if they left a stump, it would likely put out stump sprouts. But those sprouts are never going to form a really good tree because they're living off the old root system, and then you're going to end up with the same problem. It just amazes me that this thing got this big where it is. I mean, it's defying the laws of nature in a lot of ways.
Well, the root system.
Hi, I'm Julie Potter, and I am the program coordinator for the Northeastern Family Institute's Hospital Diversion Program on Putney Road in Brattleboro. We've been here since 2018, and we give care to adolescents and families who are going through a mental health crisis. The work that we do is really important, but part of where we are is very important in the community, not just for the work that we do, but also for the place that our location takes in Brattleboro and in our greater community. We are on Putney Road and in the old Chickering farm, which is the home of this silver maple tree that's about 125 years old. And unfortunately, silver maples live to maximum 125 years old, and this one is going to need to be taken down. Today we have sort of gathered as a community to celebrate this tree as a witness tree for all the things that have happened under it and in this area in Brattleboro. This all used to be farmland, as the name the Chickering Farm would indicate. NFI has really tried hard to keep this building looking as it has while being able to give the services that we do give. And we really wanted it to be a day of celebration where everybody could come together and, write some notes about the tree that we're going to preserve in the program. We've had a lot of artists reach out. Mitch Weiss took this photo of the tree about a month ago when it still had its leaves, and with a camera from the 1950s, which is another kind of cool historical fact. And has donated this to the program. We've had 3 foresters here today. Lynn Levine, who has written poems and who actually presented a poem today. Bill Gunther, who used to lead the Big Tree Tours, of which this tree was one. It's a state champion, and so it's very sad to be losing it. And then also Dan Adams, who is town forester for the Brattleboro Town Tree Committee, as well as lots of community members who are here sharing their memories. We're, again, very sad to be losing this tree, and hope to be able to, honor its memory, not just through what we've done today, but in, future endeavors with the Historical Society, more artists, and, working with arborists to hopefully be able to give back to the community, perhaps through cordwood donations and things like that. So thank you for everybody, for BCTV, for being here and helping to, sort of retrace the historical significance of this tree and what we are doing here for it today, and for our community members, both through our work with trees and through our work in the greater community. Thank you so much, Maria.